record this. It seems like we might have a couple new members. There's a couple names that I don't recognize, and we're kind of curious as to how you found out about the classes, and then we'll go ahead and get started. If you want to share who referred you or who you know and what you might hope to get out of the class. Anybody who's new? And there's no have to here.
Hi, I'm Kristen Schaefer. I'm a friend of Velvet's. I read Dr. Greger's book, The How Not to Die, and then I kind of started doing the How Not to Diet. And that was maybe a year ago. Then I fell off. And I just turned 50, and I'm a type 2 diabetic. And I want to be here to see my grandkids. I don't want, I don't want to have these comorbidities. So I need to get serious about something. So.
Well, welcome. We'll try not to be too serious. We'll try to make it a little lively for you. So,
thank you.
So it can be fun. And you actually have been referred by one of the stars of our class here, who has contributed most every session. She's here as often as she could possibly make it. And she has had some really good benefits, as I'm sure you've heard from her, from Velvet. And anyway, thank you, Velvet, for referring Kristen, and welcome.
I'm so glad you're here.
So is there anybody else who would care to share how you wound up coming to these classes? See a couple other new names. And okay. So we don't like to put anybody on the spot, except I've been known to kind of put the med students on the spot at times. The one with the smile, Rachel. So we're happy to have you. Glad you could make it to class. And look forward to sharing a bit with you. I think it'll be worth your time. Anybody else who is new here who would like to kind of share anything?
I haven't seen Christine in a while. She's here. Say hi, Christine.
Christine, unmute yourself. There you go.
No, I was on a long time ago, but you kind of over a year ago. And then I was on the program, and then I kind of went off of it for a while, and then I went on kind of half and half. And now I'm kind of on it, but then sometimes I go off of it. So it's hard. My husband likes to eat some other things too. So, I'm interested in it, and I think it's well worth doing. I really do. I think that's the way to be. So I just wanted to see get re-enthused again.
Great. Well, that's one of the main purposes of our class, to support those who are trying to stay on track and finding it a bit difficult because our culture is not particularly supportive, but we're getting there, hopefully, as time goes on. Anybody else? So, Virgil and Marilyn.
Yes.
Yeah, we kind of wanted to hear from you for just a moment, because we have a couple new members here, and maybe you could kind of tell them why you choose to come to meeting after meeting and get punished every week or whatever it is? Or is this fun for you?
You want the truth?
Do you want the truth or just a good story?
Well, we'd like a good story, but the truth is what they want to hear.
Well, we came because in a year ago, December, I had a very small stroke. It wasn't dramatic or caused any problem, but we were curious about changing diet, if that might make a difference, because I have cardiovascular disease, bad plumbing. So through Andrew Casper, he suggested we log into the site, give us a flyer. And
Our doctor is the one that pointed us to Andrew Casper. He's with OMG, Dr. Schwartz.
yeah, he pointed us to it. So that's how we got started. And it's, you know, the side benefits was I've lost about 25 pounds. Marilyn went 35 pounds. So all the pants I was going to throw away, I can now wear.
I'm wearing my daughter's pants because she's now losing weight and they're passing down. And I never thought I'd see a size 8 again. I was in a 16.
But that's,
So-
you know, just this one side of it. We didn't do it for weight loss.
Have you had to starve yourself?
No, we eat like kings and queens. And the reason we stay is because of the support group. You guys keep us conscious of what we eat, so we just don't go binging.
We stuff ourselves. We're eating plenty. We never go hungry, and we're not. You know, we're not hungry for things. You know, I mean, I still get cravings for something once in a while, but I know that it's not necessarily good for me. But you know, I used to drink, and I crave a drink once in a while, but that's not good for me either. So I don't do those things. You know, it's just you just decide what you're gonna do is good for you.
And it tastes good. We're not left out.
We had rutabaga tonight.
And that was good. That was the first time.
It was good.
We love listening to both of you.
We had,
That's why I called you on you. But I also want to introduce those new members to Scott Wagnon. We're sort of partners in crime. You're going to also get to meet Dr. Eric Colgrove pretty soon. But Scott Wagnon's physician assistant, who has done a magnificent job of keeping up the website, which maybe he'll share with you, the new members, so you could kind of see how to get there. And after that, maybe we'll get on to Dr. Colgrove's presentation. But Scott, you want to say hello?
Sure. Hi, yeah, I'm Scott Wagnon, physician assistant at Oregon Medical Group. I work in internal medicine. And yeah, Charlie and I have been doing these classes for over 2 years now online. And then I was doing them for a couple years live in Springfield before that. And Charlie's been doing them for about 10 years down in Roseburg. And we met about 5 years ago. And yeah, it's welcome. I'll for the new people, I'll show you the class website if you haven't checked it out yet. So we go here. Here it is. There's the home page. And so if you're new to this, it's just www.livelifestylemedicine.com. And if you aren't already subscribed to the weekly newsletter, you can click either here or here. It's a link, and you just put your email and your first and last name in, and you'll get a welcome email newsletter. And then every Sunday morning, a new email or newsletter comes out with the upcoming class. There's a bunch of information in there every week, and the links to these classes and everything. And then also on this homepage of this website, check out the tutorial. It's about a 10-minute tutorial I recorded right here. And it just gives you an overall overview of what's all available on the website to support you, as well as the archived classes. And Christy, or the new person, since she has diabetes, you can go to the class archives here. 2022, this starts over from the beginning. We started in January, this cycle of classes, and you can watch my introduction, Dr. Ross's introduction. Then we have all kinds of topics here, meal planning and preparation. You can kind of just start going through the previous classes you missed. And then you can see here in March, we had 2 classes on diabetes. So if you're particularly interested in a specific topic, you can jump to one of the other topics. But you can start.
Thank you. Yeah, Velvet showed me all those, and I've already listened to some of them.
Oh, great.
And I think I listened to one about food addiction that maybe I think it was your wife that helped too. And
Yes.
that one was very good.
Oh, good. I'm glad you found it helpful. But yeah, great. And then yeah, I can just, if you want to, the newsletter is just a way to kind of keep a lot of people that sometimes even people that I hear from patients at work and stuff that just say, oh, I don't, even people that don't necessarily come to the class, the live classes, they watch the recordings or they use the website because it's just, and then they like getting the newsletter every week because it's just a constant reminder of why they're doing what they're doing and help keep them on track, kind of feel supported. So it's just other resources you have there. Go ahead and unshare here. So Eric can jump in here. I guess if no one else has a comment, I'll go ahead and I'll introduce Eric real quick.
Just before you introduce Eric,
Yeah.
I'm so thrilled to see a couple more medical students. We have 3 tonight, actually, that I see on the screen. And I want to give a shout out to Elisa Chick, who has worked with us doing one-on-one support of visits, either by phone or by Zoom. She's been doing this for a year with us. And she started the Facebook web site with Vonda. And we've been getting 1 to 2 new members on that Facebook site every day, just about over the last week to 10 days. It's really starting to take off. So kudos to you for doing that. And maybe you could say a quick hello and tell them what they might have in store for the new members.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, like Dr. Ross said, we have a Facebook group. If you're interested in joining that, people just ask their questions there, post recipes, encourage each other to, lean towards the whole food plant-based diet. So it's a little community that we've been building. Scott organized an event in May, I think, for everyone to join in a walk together. I'm in Pomona, so if anyone wants to fly me out, I'll be happy to attend. But you can join that, or you can also email me if you are interested in having a little more personalized help with whatever lifestyle changes you're trying to make. Primarily, it might be diet, but it could also be sleep. It could be exercise, whatever you're trying to work on. I can try and help you out there. And it's a great learning experience for me. So I really appreciate everyone that I've been able to work with. Sorry to everyone that emailed me last week during finals. I will email you back. And I'll put my email in the chat as well.
And the cost of all this, these classes, these extra supportive help and all that is nothing. It's free. We do this as give back. And I must tell you, we spend a few moments on this in our weekly activities. And the stories we hear are so inspiring. It brings joy to us, and it's really adequate payment by any means. Nancy, you have your hand up. Yeah, there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay. I wanted to hear actually what Virgil was about to say, because he was saying we don't do this for the weight loss. We do it for, and he didn't get a chance to say what that was. And I want to hear it. I think the new people might do with hearing it, because sometimes I think the focus winds up too much on weight loss here, because that is a wonderful benefit.
Go for it, Virgil.
It was ideally for health reasons because my cardiovascular disease. And as a result, an ultrasound on my carotid artery on this right side, the numbers have improved. It indicates that I'm getting better blood flow there. And I've got some other indications. So my blood pressure has been coming down, although I have not discontinued any medication at this time. but I can feel the difference. And I can see the difference. So it's our reason for health, to improve our health. And we feel better, we sleep better, we're just healthier. We feel healthier, more energy. I'm 78 and I'm a young 78. So, and part of it's this last year plus has been because of the diet. That's made a big difference in the way we feel.
I hope
And
you all get.
if you just send me 2 nickels on a dime, I'd be okay.
Thank you very much for that. That's great. Okay, and so now, Scott, you want to introduce Dr. Colgrove, Eric, and we'll continue to have some fun.
Yeah, so Dr. Eric Colgrove, he's a pediatrician at Oregon Medical Group. And, but I'll let him, share a little bit about himself, but I just wanted to welcome him to, he's been coming to the classes for the past couple years almost. And he's gotten plant-based certification, and he's done a lot of study on his own, looked at the science, and he's just one of our partners in crime now. So he'll let him share a little bit about himself right now. Take it away, Eric.
Yeah,
All right.
welcome.
All right. Hi, everybody. Good to be here. I'm Eric Colgrove. I'm one of the pediatricians with Oregon Medical Group. I work over at Westmoreland Clinic, which is over there on 18th and Chambers. And been doing that at Chambers for 9 years, but I've been a pediatrician for 23 years. And that's what this picture on the left represents. It's supposed to be me on the left. And then on the right is my other passion. So definitely pediatrics has been a passion for me, but this new passion has been one that's really transformed my life personally and professionally. And I just am so grateful that I was able to find this. And it was actually this passion of whole food, plant-based medicine is what it is. This idea of nutrition, I was excited about in medical school, but then it became very evident that I wouldn't have nutritional education in medical school at all. There were no classes whatsoever. Now some medical schools, or most medical schools, have some nutrition education, but we had nothing. And I was complaining about it to people and to the deans of the medical school and everything. And so anyways, I got very busy with medical school and then residency. You got mountains of books and unbelievable amounts of time. So I ended up kind of forgetting about my passion for nutrition. I didn't have any good background or education in nutrition at all, but I just knew it was an important thing. So I just put it out of my mind for many years. And when I came to Oregon, I heard about these classes, and this is what really spurred me on to be excited about it again and really transform my life. So just amazing to me to be part of this, and I really want to pass that on to other people, but also I'm in a unique position to help parents educate their families about how this can transform the health of their families and the health of the planet. So let's see. Oh, hold on a second.
Sometimes when it's idle, you have to advance it manually.
Yeah, no, it's it's crashing on me. Hold on.
While you're working on that, I'm going to just explain to the group that it's Dr. Colwell and Scott Wagner who came up with this idea of who else might be in the community and has formed a group of Eugene plant-based providers, which now has about 30 members from surgeons and one surgeon and a pediatric cardiologist and family doc and internist, nurse, registered dietitians. So this is becoming a big thing for this Eugene Springfield area, and we will soon be doing lots of activities in the community, or as much as we're able to do, to keep spreading the word. Sorry, Eric.
Well, that's okay. I'm currently trying to figure it out. So this reminds me very much of last year.
The same thing happened?
Now, a totally different thing. Here he goes. It's going.
That first,
Okay.
are you good? Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny. Being that last year was like that. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna share this again. Oh. Wait a minute. Darn it. Huh. Yeah, let's see. I'm trying to fix this. Why don't you play the first video anyways?
Okay.
That'd be great.
Oh, there it's coming on.
That's me.
Oh, it's you? Okay. Eric, you may want to log out and log back in.
Yeah, no, it's my other program.
It was this landmark study published in 1953 that radically changed our view about the development of heart disease forever. A series of 300 autopsies performed on US battle casualties of the Korean War. Average age, 22. 22 years old, but 77% of their hearts had gross evidence, meaning visible to the eye evidence of coronary atherosclerosis, hardening of their arteries. Some of them had vessels that were clogged off 90% or more. As an editorial in the Journal of the American Medical Association concluded, this widely cited publication dramatically showed that atherosclerotic changes appear in the coronary arteries years and decades before the age at which coronary heart disease becomes a clinically recognized problem, before symptoms arise. Follow-up studies on the hearts of thousands more soldiers over the subsequent years confirmed their results. How young does it go? Fatty streaks, the first stage of atherosclerosis, was found in the arteries of 100% of kids by age 10. What's accounting for this buildup of plaque even in childhood? In the 80s, we got our first clue, the now famous Bogalusa heart study, looking at autopsies of those dying between the ages 3 years old to age 26. And the number one risk factor was cholesterol. You could see the stepwise increase in the amount of their arteries covered in fatty streaks as the level of bad cholesterol in the blood increased. As powerful as this was only looking at 30 kids. So they decided to study 3,000. 3,000 accidental death victims, ages 15 through 34. After thousands of autopsies, they were able to produce a scoring system, able to predict advanced atherosclerotic lesions, the coronary arteries of young people. The higher your score, the higher the likelihood you have these lesions growing in your heart. So if you're in your teens, 20s, early 30s, and you smoke, your risk goes up a point. If you have high blood pressure at such a young age, that's 4 points. If you're an obese male, 6 points. But high cholesterol was the worst. If you are non-HDL cholesterol, meaning your total cholesterol minus your good cholesterol, is above like 220, that's like 8 times worse than smoking. So let's say you're a young woman with relatively high cholesterol, but you don't smoke, you're not overweight, your blood pressure and blood sugars are fine. At your sweet 16, there's just a few percent chance you already have an advanced atherosclerotic lesion in your heart. But if you don't improve your diet by your 30th birthday, there may be like a 1 in 5 chance you have some serious heart disease. And if you have really high cholesterol, it could be closer to 1 in 3. Bringing your cholesterol down to even just that of a lacto-ovo vegetarian, and you're down to here. And if you exercise to boost your HDL, you can extrapolate down a little further. So what this shows us is that even in 15 to 19-year-olds, atherosclerosis has begun in a substantial number of individuals. And this observation suggests beginning primary prevention, at least by the late teenage years, to ameliorate every stage of atherosclerosis and to prevent a retard progression to more advanced lesions. You start kids out on a low saturated fat diet, and you may see a significant improvement in their arterial function by 11 years old. Exposure to high serum cholesterol, even in childhood, may accelerate the development of atherosclerosis. Consequently, the long-term prevention of atherosclerosis might be most effective when initiated early in life, as in 7 months of age. Atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, begins in childhood. Remember, by age 10, nearly all kids have fatty streaks, the first stage of the disease. Then the plaques start forming in our 20s and get worse in our 30s, and then can start killing us all. In our hearts, it's a heart attack. In our brains, it's a stroke. In our extremities, it can mean gangrene. In our aorta, an aneurysm. If there is anyone watching this video that is older than 10 years of age, the choice likely isn't whether or not to eat healthy to prevent heart disease. It's whether or not you want to reverse the heart disease you already have. Ornish and Esselstyn proved you can reverse heart disease with a plant-based diet. But we don't have to wait until our first heart attack to reverse the clogging of our arteries. We can start reversing our heart disease right now. We can start reversing heart disease in our kids tonight.
Yeah, great, thanks. I think I got this now. Let's see.
Gotcha.
Okay,
Looks good.
good, it's working. All right.
Yep, working fine.
Great. All right. Well, that was, I love that video because it just shows how the #1 killer in the United States, that disease process starts in infancy. And, you know, so you think, okay, I'm a young person, I don't need to think about this kind of stuff. Well, yes, you're over 10 years old and you definitely already have the disease. The very earliest parts, he said 7 months. It's just amazing that it's 7 months that it would start fatty streaking of the aorta. So now this is this is basically just showing you where the standard American diet is at. And you can see how that red section is all the processed food, the fast food, the oils, the refined foods, the sweets and everything. That makes up 63% of our diet. And if you look at where we're heading, what we want to get people to is a point to where we're only doing 5 to 10% of our diet. So that little sliver of green that was only 12% of the standard American diet, that is the vegetables, fruits, whole food, whole grains, legumes. That would need to be dramatically increased. And actually that 12%, that doesn't even include the fact that half of that is plant-based processed kind of foods. So it's only 6% of our diet is whole food, plant-based foods, which is just incredible. And now we're looking at where we need to be over 90% really to have a healthy, happy life for our body. This is what we're designed to eat. And if we already have a serious chronic illness, disease, which should be upwards of 95 to 100% of whole food plant-based diet. Otherwise, yeah, you can be down 90 to 95%. But that video that we just saw really does show perfectly well how, adult diseases do tend to start in childhood. Not all adult disease, but heart disease, autoimmune disease, even cancers can start at young age. When you think about someone who is diagnosed with cancer, it's not like they suddenly just develop this tumor. It's something that has been growing for usually a decade or 2 decades. So it's something that is much more long lasting than we think about. But we should know that obesity is a big disease that starts in childhood. Basically, at age 6, 50% of obese children are likely to become obese adults. And then teens, if they're still obese as teens, they have an 80% risk of being obese adult. So really it shows you that, these things start very early. I don't worry about it too much when a child who is, 1 or 2 is obese, because that's not really the same. And actually, when I was a baby, I was huge. I was a huge baby who was fed a lot of breast milk and probably a lot of cow's milk, and I was very big. But then I found my natural growth pattern, and it was I'm a very thin guy because of my genetics. I come from thin stock, and that's just how it is. I can't really control that too much. But some people have the opposite kind of genes where their bodies want to hold on to energy. And let me stop sharing for a second. So some bodies just have this propensity to hold on to energy. That is something that we see especially in people who come from cultures that may have, like we see this a lot in Islanders and Native Americans. You see it more in Hispanics or Native Indians and African Americans. But basically, there was more feast and famine that those groups, we think, had to deal with, and so their bodies evolved to be more thrifty with their calories, and so they would hold on to their calories, and that worked great for thousands of years ago. But it doesn't work so well when we've got all these fast food places and all these thousands and thousands of calories all around us. So in that situation, then suddenly we are those extra calories become really a poison to us. They become toxic. So yeah, and I wanted to stop here and just see if anybody had any questions about things. I know this is a different kind of presentation. Normally we're talking about adult diseases and that kind of stuff. We do this. We did this once last year. We'll do it every once in a while. But I think it's good to think about how do we create a generation, create families that have health from the beginning. So how do we do that? So any questions at all so far? So I'll pause and just see if anybody has anything they want to ask.
So Nancy, is your hand still up from before? Okay, it's from before. Okay.
All righty.
Is there anybody else who has a question?
I have a question.
Yes, Rachel, go for it.
So I have family members who been raised in the standard American diet, and now they're like 18 in their teens and just hate vegetables and fruits. And I guess what tips have you found to help incorporate like a whole food and like transitioning kids where really their main source of calories have been meat and fast food? So just if you're going to touch base on that, I can wait. But
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. Wait, that's a wonderful one. I think I think one of the main things is getting the processed foods out of the house, because the competition of fast food, of processed foods versus whole foods is kind of it's an unfair thing. It's kind of a super stimulator of your brain, and it's really, it's something that you can enjoy, but you have to sort of not be comparing it to really dense calories. And the reason why we're set up that way is because of when we were let's say 2 million years ago, we would be looking for very good sources of calories at food. Basically, we're looking for food. We're always scavenging for food. And when we found a nice pile of food that was the most dense in calories, that would basically light up our brains, so that we would say, hey, this is a good source of calories. Let's come back here. Let's make sure we can survive by finding these kind of foods. So that's an important thing, but it sets up this this situation in your brain where basically nowadays all the natural kind of foods that are healthy for us are not as stimulating to our brain center, our pleasure centers, as just plain old vegetables and fruits and whole grains. So that, I think that's probably one of the big things, is getting that out of the house and getting really working. It's got to be a family effort. I think you're trying to just get one person to change their behavior. It's not really going to work. I think starting with small things, it shouldn't be a change all at once. Although really, I think one of the big things is identify those issues that like cookies and sodas and things that are going to be very dense in calories and going to stimulate your brain too much. So, and actually I have a video with the Charlie, what's that one, or Scott, what's that one video where it's the pleasure trap video?
Yeah, it's Doug Lyle.
Yes, Doug Lyle.
Yeah. Pleasure trap. I might chime in a little bit also, Rachel. It's different age groups are different. If you're talking about adolescents, you're running into a significant challenge. So you're going to have to kind of focus on some of the Impossible Burger and the fake plant-based foods to try to convince them that these foods can have a taste and texture that's similar to what they like. And then they may gradually transition as they learn more about the effects on the environment and how, what we eat increases the global warming if we're using animals for our food sources. And they may also have some buy-in when it comes to how animals are treated by letting them see movies like I think it's Earthling, where they get really turned off by how animals are abused to feed us. And so there may be a strategy with adolescents that's totally different from the strategy of the younger pediatric age group, which those would be more by example. Like Scott or Eric is saying, that you get the junk foods out of the house and you have fruits and vegetables that are available for them. You can cut them into fun shapes, which are engaging. there's a number of videos that are available to kind of help you make those transitions with younger kids, making it fun for them, having them cook things with you. Like when my grandchildren came up and I introduced them to kale, I gave them a bite of kale. They said, "Ooh, this is bitter. We don't want this." And then I said, "Have you ever had kale chips?" "No." "Well, let's make some kale chips." I had them tear the lettuce off the stem. "What do you want to put on it?" They said cinnamon. So they took the cinnamon and they sprinkled it all over, and they ate like 4 trays worth of kale over the next couple days because they were engaged in this activity by themselves. They were, making a decision on their own, and that was beneficial. The other is you could do it gradually, like Dr. Colwell says, and that Colgrove, it's like Meatless Mondays, make it fun, have some banners, whatever you want to do, but there are various strategies for various ages, and it is doable.
I love that idea. I'm so glad you brought that up, Charlie. The idea of being involved, engage your children with this stuff, really get them, if you're making a shake, and they might not want sort of some of the bitter kind of greens or something in the shake, but if you could say, well, why don't you decide how much you want of it? This is something that's going to be healthy for us. We should eat this, but why don't you put in how many leaves of spinach or whatever are in this thing, so you can get them involved and actually have them help you decide how much. And that really does help. That the engagement of cooking isn't, but also the engagement of growing. I think, if you can get kids growing foods, it's another level of getting them involved with their health and eating. It really does. So
I have another question for you, Eric, and that is, breast milk is undoubtedly the food of choice for infants under a year of age or under 6 months of age or whatever they is. But then when they transition into milk, what would be, traditionally it's been cow's milk that we've been using. What are your thoughts on that? Does Dr. Spock have anything to say about that from what you've read, the old pediatrician? And what are we to do with the organizations that are so cued into doing the old method as to what might be healthiest for the kids?
That is definitely good questions. And actually let me go ahead and share that, because this next screen we talk about breastfeeding. So let me just share that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I think, as far as like the benefits of breastfeeding, it's almost a no-brainer, because you get decreased asthma, you get decreased ear infections, decreased illnesses involving vomiting and diarrhea, decreased obesity, decreased SIDS even. You get less childhood leukemia, definitely less diabetes. So breastfeeding benefits are huge, and nothing can replace those benefits. We do have to do formula in some people that can't breastfeed, but really breastfeeding, I try to encourage people to do it for 2 years, not just 6 months. Certainly 6 months is fantastic. And any little bit that people can do, even if it's 2 months, even if it's a month, it is fantastic for your baby. But I try to really get them to think about this for 2 years if they can. The World Health Organization recommends for 2 years. The American Academy of Pediatrics says at least 1 year, if not 2. The World Health Organization definitely recommends 2 years. So
okay, so what happens if a mother for whatever reason, after a year or 6 months or whenever the time is, can no longer breastfeed. You have down there which is best formula. The baby needs to eat something, and if let's say mother's taken out of the picture, not available, or whatever the reason is, what would you recommend?
Well, recommend if they're younger than a year, I recommend breast milk banks.
Okay.
That would be the best way to go. If they're over 1, then it's switching to water and you know, what's so nice about some of the plant milks that are out there is that they're being better fortified nowadays. So you can get vitamin D and calcium and other things. So much like cow's milk is fortified, they're starting to fortify more of these plant milk, which is, I think, a really good thing. One of the ones, well, we'll talk about the different micronutrients in these, but let me move on to that next. There we go. Okay, so at 6 months, typically we start some solid foods for breastfed babies, and really those first foods should be whole grains and fruits and vegetables. My personal favorites are avocados, bananas, sweet potatoes, chopped cooked greens, whole grain baby foods. Other than rice cereal, probably, you know, it's kind of been our traditional go-to for babies, for pediatricians talking about babies that are turning 6 months. But we kind of back off from rice cereals quite as much, because rice does contain, a lot of rice contains some little micro amounts of arsenic. It has to do with the soil, the contamination in soils that where rice is grown. And though that micro amount of arsenic is not harmful to us, but to a growing little brain, it's probably not the best. And so recommendation would be to not rely so heavily on rice. You can still use rice cereal and rice products, but just, I wouldn't use it as like a main food like we used to say to do. So that's one change. The other thing that's changed over time is exposing your child to allergenic foods that would normally cause allergies in kids should be given at 6 months. These would include things like peanut products, seed butters, or tree nuts in the form of butters, powders, purees. Really, those are important for reducing the risk of food allergies. If you are saying, well, gee, I'm afraid to give my baby some of these different foods because of, you know, they're afraid of allergy to foods, well, that's exactly how you can increase the risk of allergies. So that almost made, you know, back probably 10 years ago, before that, the big medical organizations would talk about you should wait until you're at least a year of age to introduce these kind of foods. It never made sense to me, because you talk to people from India or Thailand, and they don't even have peanut allergies, because they expose their child from a very early age to all these peanuts and nuts. So anyways, that's definitely something to think about if you've got a child who's approaching 6 months of age and you're feeding foods. And it's really easy to introduce those foods. You don't have to get anything fancy. You can just simply take like a peanut and mash it up and sprinkle it on some of their food, or take some peanut butter and thin it out with some water and just mix it in with one of their other foods that you're doing. So, all right. This slide is just about the fact that toddlers need more calories and fat per body weight. They actually need 3 times more calories per pound of body weight than adults need. So we definitely have to think about more fat. You can't feed a little toddler like you feed an adult. You've got to figure out, okay, this child needs more more food, more fat, more calories. And they're, you think about it, they're in, at the same time that they need more, they also have a tremendous energy expenditure. They're in constant motion, and they have, small stomachs and small attention spans. And so you really have to kind of focus on making sure they get plenty of food. And it also means that you need to give them more of these yellow light foods. And if you can see the earlier lectures, if you don't know what I'm talking about, on yellow light foods. But what these are foods that are basically more dense in calories. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, what you might want to do is just look at that. I think, Scott, isn't that the first lecture?
Yeah, the traffic light handout from the first introduction lecture.
Yeah. So you want to make sure, even though we want adults to eat less of the high dense kind of foods I'm talking about, nuts and avocados and things, not eating less of them, but you just got to be more aware of eating too much of those, because they can be nuts and avocados and dried fruit and all that kind of stuff can be a lot of calories. And so it may not be ideal for adults, but for a toddler, those kind of things would be fantastic. You just have to give it in a way that doesn't cause any kind of choking concerns. So you also have to think about that. So if you have questions about that, we can talk about choking concerns. The other thing is that, starting about 4 to 6 months of age, kids, the iron stores from the mother have run out. So basically, fetuses and young babies have gotten a store of iron that lasts in an infant for 4 to 6 months, and suddenly it's kind of going down. Breast milk is not a great source of iron. It does have some iron. It's very well absorbed kind of iron, even though it's a small amount. So it's nicely absorbed, but you start to have to think about how do we supplement iron. And so you have to think about iron-rich foods. And so that means making sure that these kids are getting beans and greens, seeds, fortified grains. Again, seeds can be chokeable, so you want to make sure you use seed butter or pulverized seeds. Okay, just to mention school nutrition. I think kids want to fit in, right? So they don't. Their lunch really should look pretty unremarkable. It should look like other kids' lunches, and I think also you need to talk to kids about not lecturing others about food. Kids can be pretty judgmental, and when they've heard all these things from their parents about how they should avoid dairy or whatever, then they'll bring it to school and they'll talk to their friends about it and start lecturing their friends. So even at a young school age kind of age. So I think it's good to not have those kids be judgmental. So you have to educate them to make sure that they don't go to school and lecture people. But you can imagine that if a child is told that dairy is bad, they're going to ask you, oh, gee, what about my best friend Tommy? What's going to happen to him? He drinks a lot of milk. And, I think you just have to explain it like avoiding dairy products is more of a safety issue. It's kind of like seatbelts. You might be able to not wear your seatbelt for a couple blocks down the road, but the safest thing is to keep protected every time is to wear your seatbelts. And just explain to your child that people do different things, and we don't worry about what other people are eating or doing, just worry about ourselves. So but yeah, I think this is what you were asking about, Charlie, which is sort of this big question: is dairy really good for your body for real? And the answer has been a resounding no in terms of science. So there's a mountain of data that says cow's milk is not good for us. It turns out that milk that does the body good campaign was great marketing that fit nicely into our cultural misinformation, but it was a bit deceiving. This deception has really been going on for many decades, and of course it continues. The milk industry, all these industries, these food industries are very powerful and do wonderfully well at convincing others that their product is safe and good. And you know, really, we grew up with this notion that milk, you had to have milk in order to have healthy bones and teeth and everything and body. You had to have cow's milk. Well, it turns out that's just not right. Drinking the milk of drinking the breast milk of another species just is not good. It's not what any other species on the planet does. And so it causes just an unbelievable number of medical problems. And you think about why did we start drinking breast milk anyways? You know, so here's this a picture over here. You know, it's been done for thousands of years. And you know, it's probably been done for about 10,000 years, and really it was done because it prevents starvation. It was great at that time, 10,000 years ago. Can you imagine if you were able just to domesticate a cow, park it next to your house, and grab milk anytime you wanted to from this thing for a good, quick, easy calories? Well, yeah, it probably saved a lot of lives back then, 10,000 years ago. But you know, thousands of years ago, it was hard to come by calories. So that was helpful then, but it's just not helpful nowadays. We don't need those calories. And really, it wasn't, we as a species, we did not use cow's milk for long enough, and it wasn't as powerful enough for our evolution and long enough for our evolution to really change our biology and our genetics. So it was a survival factor for people 10,000 years ago, but just not big enough and long enough survival a factor to really adjust our biologies to be able to handle it. I'm going to stop sharing here. I just want to see if anybody had any questions about the things I was mentioning.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
What was the slide? What did you mean by the slide that said consider baby-led weaning? I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't.
Baby-led weaning. And you know what? I didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
Because it's something that you can look into more. But basically, this idea of letting babies feed themselves and not just like being passively having a spoon shoved in their mouth, it is an interesting concept that really does work pretty well. Those kids tend to be able to manipulate food much better than the spoon-fed other kids, and they're able to more easily stop when they're full. You know, they don't have a spoon being shoved in their mouth. And so baby-led weaning, it's gotten really big in Europe, especially England, but it's kind of it's picking up on popularity in the States. I think it's a good thing. You know, it freaks parents out because they're worried about choking, but really you don't have to worry about it. There's been studies looking at choking episodes and people who are doing baby-led weaning and regular spoon feeding, and there's no difference. But I think one thing that people would get concerned about with what they think is choking is actually just gagging. Young babies have a gag reflex that instead of being way at the back of the throat, it's more up farther, more up like the back of the tongue, and they have a very sensitive gag reflex, and so they can easily gag themselves, and that really gets the parents' attention. They're thinking that they're choking, but they're not. They're just gagging, that's okay. And then, you know, it's also a way for those kids to teach themselves how to eat and how not to gag, and be able to handle those foods better. I'm not one to be a really firm on baby-led weaning. I just think it's another tool that people may hear about and is okay to use as a tool. And what typically we do is we'll have, you know, we say, okay, this child's now 6 months. Let's get you know, some slices of avocado. We get some little slices of banana. Not disc-like pieces of food, but like finger-shaped pieces of food that they can grab onto and start putting towards their mouth. And it's really kind of cool to see the videos. I didn't have the opportunity to do this for my kids because no one talked about it or knew about it back then. But nowadays you're seeing, you know, if you look on YouTube, you can find all kinds of baby-led weaning videos, and they're really quite amazing to see these little 6-month-olds feeding themselves pieces of avocado and banana and soft sweet potato and different things. It's just wonderful. I love it. So I try to just bring it up and say, hey, this is an option you may want to think about, as opposed, because most people just think about the spoon, just think about the purees and getting, you know, shoving that food in the baby's mouth. And you kind of wonder if does that have something to do with obesity? You know, this idea that, okay, I'm food goes in my mouth and I don't really have control over it. You know, if I can control this amount of food, our bodies are amazing. They know exactly how much calories we need. And you know, I think you don't want to train against that ability. So
I think it was just the word weaning. I thought you meant like stopping breastfeeding.
Yeah, that's the word they use for you're absolutely right. There's just the word they use, and I don't know why, because you shouldn't, and nobody recommends stopping breastfeeding at 6 months. It's just baby-led weaning is, I think it's weaning onto solid foods. I think it's not weaning from breast milk. I think it's weaning onto solid foods is what I think it is. I'm not totally sure, but that's my understanding of it.
Thank you so much. And I did join a little bit later, but did you talk about not introducing solid foods at 5 months versus like waiting until 6 months? Because I mean, I work with infants and toddlers for 30 years, and I see parents introduce food kind of too early. With our kids, you know, I read all I could, and of course they breastfed till they were 2 and almost 3, but and had food, of course, but I just feel like waiting till 6 months is supposed to be better.
I agree. I think 6 months is definitely better, unless they're formula fed. If they're formula fed, it's 4 months, and that's because you know, every year we discover more things that are in breast milk, and we try to make the formula more and more breast milk like, but we are missing some things. There are some micronutrients that we still don't know about, that we'll know about in future years. But it turns out that it's probably good to get those things from just real food. So we try to get the food going. If the baby developmentally is ready for some food, 4 months for formula fed foods, and for breastfed babies, yeah, I think it's closer. Really, 6 months is what I recommend. So I agree. Yeah.
So formula fed babies, they won't have, if they have food at 4 or 5 months, that won't be negative for them, like in some way. I thought that was even for formula fed, like.
No, it'd be harder for them to be missing the little micronutrients that they could be getting. The thing is, you got to make sure that they're developmentally appropriate. They can sit up, they can hold their head up. Obviously, if they can't hold their head up, it's not a good situation. They need to be
Yes,
able to
that's
sit up,
exactly
hold their-
right.
Yeah. So, and also be able to take their hand and put food in their mouth. You know, I think that's another developmental thing they might not be ready for at 4 months. So it kind of depends, but typically at closer to 4 months for formula fed babies, but it's not going to cause any problems. You know, it's kind of weighing the risk and benefits of not getting some of the unknown micronutrients.
Okay. And my last question is, what do you think about those little things that people use to feed infants, like those little bags? I don't know what they're called, but they're like mesh bags that you put like a fruit in and suck on it a lot. What do you think about those?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, I haven't thought too much about it. I think they're okay. I have to think more about that. Do you all know what we're talking about? The mesh bags, those like little nets that you put soft pieces like a pear or something in there, and the baby then sucks it out of it through the little net. So I don't know. It's not my favorite thing, that's for sure. But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
As long as they're getting the full fiber, if it's going through the holes, that's okay. If the fiber's left behind and they're just getting the juice, that probably wouldn't be as healthy. But I don't know. I've not seen that or know what it's about.
Yeah, no, I was asking Moochie Beth. Is that your name?
Yeah, Beth.
Beth.
Yes, Beth.
Beth. Yes. So maybe you have more experience, being that you've done a lot of feeding of infants for many years. Any thoughts about those nets?
Can I say something?
Oh, please.
Yeah.
My daughter would put frozen fruit in when the kids were teething, and it gave them something to eat that was nutritious.
Yeah.
And they get frozen blueberries or whatever, and they were real happy with that. It kept them happy too, as well as it felt good on their gums.
And you don't have to worry about the choking hazard of sticking a blueberry in a young infant's mouth. Yeah. So there's some definitely benefits I can imagine.
Yeah, I don't think that they're necessarily a problem. I think what I see mostly, or what I read too, is like making sure babies, and maybe you said this before I joined on, but making sure they have like not just always fruit flavored stuff and sweet stuff, because then they'll just develop this sweet tooth, and making sure they have like the vegetables and things. Introducing those maybe even first. Everyone does like the rice cereal first, but like doing like maybe some kind of like pureed squash or something like that.
Absolutely. I definitely talk to people about using bland foods first, and get that taste in their mouth, get them used to eating bland foods first, and not getting them used to. Can you imagine if your child, the first flavor they had were oranges? Would they ever want any other food that tastes as boring as squash or something? Yeah, so I try to make sure people are doing some regular vegetables before that, much more, get them really on that.
And the other thing I see a lot are these pouches that everyone's eating out of pouches nowadays. And I don't know what I think about that. Some of my co-teachers feel like, you're not really like chewing your food anymore. You're just sucking it out of a pouch. So, but it's so convenient for parents. And of course they're in colleges now too. But so I don't know, but I guess maybe you're not getting the fiber, but like everything's in a pouch. Those things I mean, those squeezy things.
Yeah. What should be in there in colleges now?
Well, like applesauce, you go and get your applesauce, squeeze it into your mouth, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not like baby food, but like, other things. Or yogurt, you squeeze the yogurt in your mouth, and and I don't know, but a lot of those, like the baby foods, they have like the veggies, but then they always have so having a veggie by itself.
Yeah, I exactly. I think I like the idea of encouraging whole foods.
Eric.
Yes.
Could you comment about the association of cow's milk and diabetes type 1? I don't know that most parents are familiar with that, or grandparents.
I know this association has been known for quite a while. I remember when I was in residency, the talk about how there was this association between cow milk and type 1 diabetes, severe type diabetes. And that's a scary connection. I mean, type 1 diabetes is a really horrible illness and definitely reduces your lifespan, significantly, and leads to a lot of headache and a lot of other disease problems. And so there definitely is this connection. I don't know how strong it is, but it's definitely a connection that's there. Definitely one of the reasons I recommend not going from breast milk at 12 months going to cow's milk, or ever going to cow's milk. I have a sign up in every single one of my exam rooms that talk about this issue. I don't have a lot of things on my walls in my exam rooms, but I have this one thing. I want to educate people about how cow's milk is really not healthy for your child at 12 months, because we've done such an amazing job at convincing people that really they need cow's milk at 12 months of age for the rest of their lives. So they need this thing. We're not built, most of us in the world are not built to handle just the cow milk sugar, the lactose, let alone all the proteins, the cow milk protein. It's just not built for us.
So if a parent does not want to use a cow's milk because they've decided they don't want to put their child at risk for type 1 diabetes, or for whatever reasons, it's saturated fat in cow's milk, or they can't handle the sugar or whatever, and they want to use a plant-based milk, it's my understanding that soy has an adequate amount of fat content that's required in younger kids, but that almond milk and rice milk and the others do not have that same quantity and are to be discouraged. Is that your take?
Right. I think soy is definitely the best one. I think, also in terms of decreasing the risk of cancer, I would use soy, especially breast cancer. I would recommend soy. Also, there are different kinds of soy. Some of the soys are skimmed in a sense, or watered down. But you're right. If you drink any almond milk that I ever drank, has been very thin and does not have that kind of fat content. So yeah, I recommend using soy. And maybe for older kids, they can use whatever they want to. But I like at 12 months of age using soy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Charlie, what you're talking about with dairy and type 1 diabetes, does that have to do with the mother having the dairy as well during pregnancy?
I don't know. I do remember reading Dr. Spock says, don't give the old pediatrician, or the well-known, renowned guy, don't use cow's milk because of the incidents, but use soy. And I think I always took that to mean that it's the child that's eating it. I don't know that whether it's the mother drinking the cow's milk puts the baby at risk.
Yeah, I've never heard that, but certainly type 2 diabetes, a mother who has got type 2 diabetes, definitely that puts the child at higher risk for type 2 diabetes later in life, not type 1. So this is a different type of diabetes, a totally different type, but that's right. I've never heard whether or not the mothers drinking cow milk can cause type 1 diabetes in their children. So I've not heard that. I don't think that's true, or hasn't been discovered at this point. Yeah. Let me go back to sharing the screen real quick. All right. Why is that not going? There we go. Okay, this is a slide that just shows all these pictures of problems that dairy can cause, and I see this all the time. especially constipation. But you see eczema, constipation, and caprices, stomach and esophageal pain, reflux basically, iron deficiency, acne, diverticulitis, breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, all kinds of things. So this is one of the other big reasons I say just say no to dairy. But simply, just look at constipation. That's a pretty big reason kids will come to my clinic. Not certainly not number 1 or 2 or anything, but that's one of the reasons that kids get pretty miserable, stomach pains. And oftentimes when kids get stomach pains, it's because they're not pooping. And usually I can get them stooling so much better when suddenly they are eating fiber. Kids just aren't eating enough fiber. And so educating the parents about having the family eat fiber is really key. And that's what I've been working on. I wonder, see, Scott, if you could show link number 2. I'm going to stop sharing. And you could show that link number 2.
You can see my screen now. You guys can see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
This one you want?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's it.
Excessive spitting up and vomiting in infants may be treated with putting them on their left side down after meals, but of course never when sleeping. It's always face up to wake up to reduce the risk of crib death. Also, you can try smaller, more frequent feedings, thickening or changing formulas, and in breastfed infants, which is ideally how all infants should be, eliminating cow's milk and eggs from the mother's diet. I've talked about how more than 40% of infants with reflux can be successfully treated with cow's milk removal. It can also affect them on the other end too. It can be a major contributor to diaper rash and contribute to chronic constipation. In 80% of affected kids, though only a single kid tested positive for an actual cow's milk allergy. So it was like some kind of sensitivity reaction that can really only be diagnosed by giving a cow's milk free diet a try. Anal fissures in infants may be practically pathognomonic for cow's milk allergy, meaning so characteristic of the condition that it could be used as a diagnostic sign. No allergy testing required. It's like when cow milk hypersensitivity was demonstrated in 10 of 17 children with severe reflux. In the majority of patients, the hypersensitivity to cow milk was identified only by eliminating it and then re-challenging to confirm. They did endoscopies, measured the acid gurgling up before and after milk, and then verified by repeating milk exposure with double-blind, placebo-controlled challenges when necessary. Yet all but one of the children proven to have this adverse reaction to dairy tested negative on allergy tests. So tested negative for cow's milk allergy, but still got better by cutting the cow's milk out, showing that this association between cow milk hypersensitivity and severe GERD, the severe reflux, was observed not only in infants, but also in older children. Another disease that can be cured with cow's milk elimination is eosinophilic esophagitis, a chronic inflammatory disorder of the esophagus, the tube that connects your mouth to your stomach. To figure out what's causing the inflammation, an elimination diet is prescribed, where you basically remove everything, and then every time you add back a food, they stick an endoscope down your throat and take biopsies to see if that one food made things worse. And how many freaking foods are there out there? I mean, you can imagine how difficult and costly and invasive this is for families, how confusing and frustrating. So these researchers at Northwestern figured, let's just see what happens if you just remove one food from their diet instead of making them go through all that. And just eliminating cow's milk induced remission in 65% of the children they tried it on. I mean, normally you'd have to put these kids on steroids, where they try to coat their throat with steroids to knock down their immune response. And then that sets you up for infections like thrush. And of course, as soon as you stop the steroids, the esophageal inflammation comes raging back because you're not treating the underlying cause. But steroids are considered the standard of care. Too bad there's never been like a head-to-head test of cow's milk elimination versus steroids until now. A comparative effectiveness trial of cow's milk elimination versus a swallowed steroid, and they both appeared to work just as well, which is to say that cow's milk elimination worked better because no side effects, and you're treating the actual cause, suggesting getting rid of dairy products should be considered the first line therapy. In adolescence, cow's milk protein intolerance can contribute to chronic fatigue syndrome, evidently a common problem in young people with chronic fatigue, and most importantly, a treatable contributor to their symptoms. But again, most were unaware that dairy was a problem, possibly because it can take hours between milk ingestion and when you start feeling worse, so people don't make the connection. So even those who report no problems after milk ingestion may still be suffering problems after milk ingestion. And finally, what about adults? Well, there's lactose intolerance. Most people on Earth are lactose intolerant after weaning, with the exception of some human populations that developed lactose tolerance about 10,000 years ago, thanks to a mutation in the lactase gene, which enabled adult humans to digest lactose, milk sugar, or at least those select European populations, whereas most Hispanics, most Africans, and Asians remain intolerant, which may be a good thing since acid regurgitation, reflux heartburn, so common among adults in the Western world. And food intolerance may play a role in adults as well. Milk was found to be the leading culprit, but they were using what's called a leukocytotoxic test, where you see how someone's white blood cells react to individual foods in a petri dish. This test is frowned upon by professional allergy associations as not being sufficiently sensitive and specific. It can't hurt, though, to put it to the test. A double-blind, randomized controlled trial performed in 38 reflux patients for which proton pump inhibitor drugs failed to completely control their symptoms. Okay, well, let's give diet a try. They randomized people to a diet in which they excluded foods they tested sensitive to, most often dairy, versus a diet which instead excluded foods for which they didn't test positive for to control for the placebo effect. A month later, the symptoms in the control group dropped, but the symptoms in the true diet exclusion group dropped significantly further. They kind of felt bad for the control group, so they switched them to the right diet too. And 2 months later, everyone was feeling better.
Okay. Yeah, and I kid you not, I saw a guy yesterday, this 14-year-old who had years of reflux problems. And about a year ago, a little over a year ago, I convinced the family that milk is really probably making his situation much worse. He also had a history of some constipation. Usually constipation and reflux go together in a lot of patients, in my experience in clinic. And so anyways, I was able to convince them to not drink dairy anymore, not eat dairy anymore. And I saw him back a number of different times, but including yesterday, I saw him, and he was talking about how his life is so much better now that he doesn't have reflux because they stopped dairy about a year ago at my request. Let's see. So
Can you hear me?
what's that?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Belvin.
So my friend's baby is about a month old, and so spitting up and reflux is pretty much do you consider spitting up reflux?
There comes a point where spitting up is way too excessive. I mean, the honest truth is that all babies spit up some. And so spitting up is not really reflux until it becomes more of an issue where they're like spitting up with every feeding. They have painful episodes where they arch their back.
That's
losing weight.
That's what she's having. Like the baby like went into the spit and was arching his back, and she like called the doctor. Doctor basically didn't really give her any help, and she's frustrated. So, she decided to try to cut dairy out of her diet to see if it was something that might help. But she's had it with both of her kids and just not getting anywhere with it. So the mother ingesting dairy can affect the baby when they're breastfeeding.
It can, yeah. You can get those cow milk proteins through into the breast milk. That's right.
Okay.
So
I'm gonna have her watch this.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend moms. I do. I talk to moms about not doing dairy themselves.
Yeah.
Because of that exact situation where they're going to be giving cow milk protein. Number one, giving cow milk protein to their babies, and number two, it's not good for them.
Yeah.
So I try to really when I even when people come in and say I'm intolerant to lactose, I kind of make it a joyful thing. It's like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. You don't want that stuff in you anyways. Yeah, and so it's the same kind of thing. It's like you want a lifetime of not drinking the breast milk of another species. I don't care if it's aardvark breast milk or elephant breast milk or cow breast milk. It's all not made for us.
My daughter breastfed our grandson, and he had problems, and so early on she cut out all dairy products. And as soon as she cut out all the dairy products, my grandson was fine. He was perfectly fine. And then when he was about 6 or 7 months old, she started having a little yogurt, or started slowly adding it in. And every single time she added dairy back to her diet, and he was still breastfed at that point, he had severe problems. He had GI problems. He had GI bleeding. He had all sorts of different things. But as soon as she stopped dairy, he was fine.
Nice story. Yes, exactly. And I've got some of my own personal experience with dairy too. I had been drinking dairy a lot in my life, and having lots of problems with allergies, basically a form of asthma, even where every fall I would get a viral infection, and I would have this kind of not even weak cough that was just irritating, that would only really get better if I took albuterol, the asthma medicine, the puffer. And it really got worse about 2 years, just horrible, like 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. And that was at a point where I was making tons of my own yogurt. And this yogurt, it's basically like just concentrated milk. I love the thick, creamy yogurt, right? So I take like a whole gallon of whole milk and dump it in my hot pot, my yogurt maker, and then I would make this stuff and eat just ungodly amounts of yogurt. And it was just horrible for my body. And just thinking about all that saturated fat, but just all this cow protein that I was ingesting. But as soon as I started going to these classes and changing the way I ate and completely cut that yogurt out, all of my allergies, I had just had simple kind of hay fever for decades, and I have not had one iota of spring allergies. I don't get it anymore. It used to be miserable. I used to have to take, every single orifice of my head would just be dripping from this and itching, and it went away remarkably. It's amazing. And in my lungs, I've never had that kind of coughing episode, needing albuterol, the puffer, ever since I stopped. So that's my own personal little experience.
I
I
love
have-
that story. Go
I have,
ahead.
I have a similar story. Since I was a preteen, I would get a cough. If I got a cough, and usually in the fall or the spring, it would subsequently last sometimes for 9 months.
Mm,
And I mean a horrible
Yeah.
cough.
yeah.
And I couldn't use the albuterol inhaler for some reason. I couldn't figure it out. But every year it would last months and months and months and months. And we always called it a postnasal drip. I was allergy tested and dairy didn't come up. But as soon as I changed and became whole food plant-based like I am now, I have had twice coughs, and once it lasted for 4 days and once it lasted for 10 days, which is normal for normal people when they get a cold. I had never had that experience. If I got a cold, that cough would come on and it would last, like I said, 9-10 months.
Man, we are like twins. That's exactly my story.
Mhm.
Wow, that's amazing. Anybody else have that experience?
I had a severe cat allergy. And if I was around, my sister has cats, and if I went to her house, I ended up in the emergency room. So probably for about, 35 years, I haven't gone to my sister's house. And since I've been on whole food, plant-based, I used to, before I started the whole food plant-based, I would go to her house and be outside. But I just now, with you telling the story, realized in the last year and a half, then since I've been whole food plant-based, I can go to her house. I don't sit on her fabric sofas, but I can be in her house. And it used to be I walk into the house and we headed to the emergency room. But now I can go and I can stay in her house. I sit on leather furniture, but I'm able to stay there for as long as 5 hours.
That's a wonderful story.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we're kind of getting short on time. I'm about halfway done, but we're not going to go any farther. I'll save this for another time, but there's actually one more video. I think that would be really good.
So
Do we have time for one video?
Yeah,
we could do that, or we could, go ahead, Scott. We can kind of,
if you're available next week, Eric, you can do part 2 next week as well, but we can still show one more video if you want.
Yeah, so let me
Are you-
before you share, let me share my slide here.
all right, are you available for next week to kind of do isn't that the review week anyway, Scott?
Yeah, but we could push everything
Yeah.
back. You can do you can do part 2, finish this presentation next week.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be good. Yep. Okay. Let me just share the screen real quick.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention about one of the crazy things is that we're seeing menarche happen at a much earlier age. Does anyone know what menarche is? What is menarche?
Starting of the menstrual cycle.
Starting of the menstrual cycle. So that first paragraph talks about menarche is the age which the young woman begins her menstrual cycle. And the average, boy, 100 years ago, a little over 100 years ago, the average was like 16 and a half. You'd get people, sometimes they wouldn't start their periods until 17, 18. And some of the reason was because of poor nutrition. But what we also understand is that early age menarche is not good for the body. It basically means a lot more time with estrogen exposure from your own estrogens, and it's just not good. So there's actually been studies, and you can see how for those who begin to have menstrual periods prior to age 12, about 20% higher rate of breast cancer than those who start before, in those who are before age 12 than compared to those women who start after age 14. So we'd like to see more of this menarche starting a little bit later. I think everyone's kind of proud of their girls when they start real early, but that's just not really necessarily a healthy situation. So that 20%, that's a pretty significant risk. And it actually, if you stratify it out, you see that for each year earlier than that 12, it definitely, it's more and more. The more time you have with these estrogens in your body, the more breast cancer that you can see. And that's true on the other side too of menopause. So if you somehow delay menopause, it's not quite as strong of an effect, but it's still an effect. It's about half the effect. But that's just more time on either side. If you're exposed to estrogens from your diet, that can also prolong when you're fertile. And when you're fertile is this time when your own natural body will make these extra estrogens. So increased estrogen, I'm talking about two different things. One is a dietary estrogen, and one is actually estrogens produced in your own body. So the dietary estrogen, we're understanding more, is that cow milk may be a significant part of this. That's because 100% of all cows that we're getting milk from are lactating. So those cows that are lactating, producing cow milk for us, 100%, of course, they're lactating. They're giving us the cow milk, and that is a lot of estrogen from their own bodies. So it's not estrogen that is being pumped into these cows artificially. It's just that these cows are all making their own estrogens. Here's another thing, is that 75% of the cows are pregnant. And when they're pregnant, they're producing a lot more estrogen. So 75% of dairy cows are pregnant, 100% are lactating. This is not a good situation in terms of giving our young girls dairy. So,
Eric.
Yeah.
Thank you. That it's an important topic, and we're going to continue on next week. There was a question that says, does intake of soy have a correlation to the estrogen levels? And the answer is no, but that is going to be explained further next week. So you're going to need to come back to have a further discussion about that.
Good. That's a great place to start. Thank you.
Next week, if you could maybe talk about, I know what you're saying about the 20%, but how many of studies have there been of women that have maybe had an early menarche but then have become vegan and not had the dairy, because those studies might have followed people who have continued to have dairy, but there are a small set of people who have stopped having dairy, and then hopefully that reduces it later.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I got a week to look into it.
Okay, thank you for the questions. We could keep going into infinity, but in the interest of, trying to keep you all interested, next week is coming up. It's only 7 days a week. We loved having you all the questions. Thank you all for coming. Eric, thank you so much.
Thank you, yes.
That was wonderful discussion, and we look forward to hearing some more next week. Scott,
all right, thank you. Yes, appreciate it.
Try.
We'll pick up where we left off.
See you in the movies.
The movie.
Bye, everyone. Good night.
Good night.